Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to be looking at part 2 of The Last Adventure. Now this of course is the box set that basically wraps up the Six Doctors run. And it's four different stories. And this was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Unknown Don't Trust Numbers. It is the Big Finish set that I'd really been wanting. Such beautiful packaging. And I just got done listening to The Red House, which is part 2. So I'm halfway through this box set now. And once again, I very much enjoyed it. Big Finish is, of course, very hit or miss with me. But I really enjoyed part 1 of this set, as I talked about in my review for it, The End of the Line. But I also really liked The Red House as well. It's hard to know where to begin with this one. Like most of the time when I listen to Big Finish, it does take a minute to get organized, in the sense that usually when I start a Big Finish, I feel like I'm stepping into the middle of a story and I have no idea what's going on. So it takes me a minute to kind of get acclimated to the story, to get acclimated to all of these different people talking, trying to associate this voice with this character. So there is a little bit of confusion at the beginning of it as I'm trying, because I didn't read any kind of synopsis, so I don't know what's happening. It's trying to get acclimated with what's happening. Now, I do adjust pretty quickly. The story does a good job with me going, okay, this is what's going on, and this is who's voicing this person. People do kind of have some distinctive voices. Now, Colin's voice does sound a little older. He is considerably older. And it is something I note a lot of times on the Big Finish audios. I'm like, okay, they sound a little older. But I usually adjust to that very quickly, as I did with this story. And it wasn't that long before it just sounds like the Sixth Doctor to me. You know, I very quickly adjust to the fact he's not the same age he was in 1985 or 84 or 86. He's just the Sixth Doctor. It just sounds like the Sixth Doctor at that point. Now, I love how the beginning of the story, the whole idea of the story, it's basically werewolves, but docile werewolves. You know, it's almost like it takes the whole trope of werewolves and turns it on its head. When the werewolves at nighttime are in their wolf form, that's when they're domesticated and docile and normal. It's during the daylight when they don't quite turn human, they turn kind of Cro-Magnon caveman human, that they become violent. So it's really taking the trope of a werewolf and flipping it. And it does it in such a way that it almost feels like it's very self-aware and poking fun at the trope. And it's almost like it's picking on the trope, but it does it without ever becoming absurd and without ever becoming a caricature and without ever becoming a pantomime. You know, but it is this, it does, especially early on, have this feeling of being playful about what it's doing at the beginning. And then as the story progresses, you actually get the backstory of how this little island came to be the way it is, which actually makes it feel more like a solid, serious story. It's really neat how it skirts that line without crossing over into being a parody. It never does that. The voice work is good. I like the kind of one leader of the werewolves that are kind of the rebels. He has this kind of, he's like a hippie. He sounds like a hippie. Man, I don't know what you're talking about, man. He says man a lot. He does. I'm sitting there going, a werewolf hippie. I don't know why I like the idea of a werewolf hippie. But it's neat seeing all this unfold. And again, some of the silly stuff, because there's another character in there, they call her Dr. Payne. And you get the impression that that's her name, Dr. Payne. And I'm just like, that's so on the nose. The torturer, because that's what they kind of give you the impression she is. The person you don't want to go see is called Dr. Payne. You know, and you get this impression that maybe the story's being a little silly. But again, as the story progresses, you find out it's not. It's actually a very serious story. And that's not actually her name. It's like Dr. Painter or something. And she's actually a pretty good person. It has a lot of humor at the beginning when the doctor's talking about his coat. And he has Charlie with him. Now, I'm familiar with Charlie. This might actually be the first time I've heard a story with Charlie. But I am aware of Charlie's character. I know her and Bernice, I think, are probably the two biggest audio companions that I've heard of. I know Charlie traveled with the 8th Doctor, and then like right after she left the 8th Doctor, she traveled with the 6th Doctor. Because I think like the 8th Doctor drops her off, he leaves, and immediately the TARDIS reappears, and it's the 6th Doctor. I think, I know I've heard about that somewhere. And although I don't know if she's ever told the 6th Doctor she's traveled with a future incarnation of himself. So that's interesting in how the Valeyard uses that here. Michael Jason is great in this. When he shows up, you can tell how he's manipulating events and trying to manipulate Charlie to get to meet his own ends and to accomplish his objectives, which is basically to steal this kind of machine. He's trying to steal this machine, which kind of removes like certain emotions and stuff. He's trying to steal it, which he does. We'll probably see that come into play later. But Michael Jason's doing a great job voicing the Valeyard. I can never remember if it's the Valeyard or the Valeyard. The Valeyard? I cannot remember the exact way to pronounce that. Which is frustrating considering I watched Ultimate Foe not that long ago. But he's great in it. He has this really good voice. It just commands the attention. In part 1, he really just had a bit of a cameo at the end just to kind of tie in with the box set. But he's in this one a little bit more. He's a little more predominant here. Definitely the events taking place are a little more predominant here. And there's not really any necessarily bad guys besides him in this. It's just circumstances play out the way they do. I love the fact that the werewolves have an origin story. It talks about how they became werewolves and why they're on the island, why they're not on the mainland, and the potential conflict between the mainland and the island. And I just love the idea of, hi, we're werewolves. When we're at night, we're docile, normal, good people, and then the day, when we become the like the bear skins or whatever they're called, that's when they turn all. It's neat of taking that trope and. But I enjoy some of the stuff with the Doctor's coat, like when him and Charlie are running at the beginning, and she wants his coat, and he's like, not my coat! He'll drag it on the ground and get it dirty. He ends up giving her his coat, and then she falls into a pit. He's like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, and he goes, and she goes, don't you even ask about your coat. The whole bit about the coat's funny. They do have some humorous moments right there at the beginning when they're interacting with each other. And it has some other little humorous jabs at the Doctor, like when the Valeyard's trying to manipulate Charlie. And everything needs to play out like this, but you just know there's going to be some liberal person who's going to step in and try to fix things and save everything. It's going to cause problems, and it cuts right to wherever the Doctor is at the time, talking about, we've got to save everything. That's pretty funny. It had little moments like that. And Charlie gets on him later. She's like, you idiot, you're going to ruin everything. It does have these really little humorous bits in it that I enjoy. It's a really good story. I'm very much enjoying the box set so far. Both the stories have been good. I think the first story was better, but I still think the second story was good. I've never thought to have a reverse werewolf situation. And again, like I said, at the beginning of the story, it kind of seems like it could be one of those stories that's a bit self-aware, poking fun at itself. But as the story progresses, you see, no, it's a pretty serious story. It explains exactly why everything's the way it is. Gives a really good backstory on it. Really, really fun. Really enjoying The Last Adventure. Having listened to the first half of it now, both stories are really, really good. The cast all do a good job in it. I love the idea of a hippie werewolf. So yes, The Last Adventure Part 2, The Red House. I liked it. I thought it was a really fun listen. Have you listened to it? If you have, comment down below and let me know what you think of it and Part 1, The End of the Line. Other things to do, click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I want to give a shout out to Unknown Don't Trust Numbers. I really appreciate him sending this to me. I'm really looking forward to listening to part 3 soon and seeing how I like it. I also want to give a shout out to Colin Coney and Stephen Crane, 2 of my top tier patrons. I appreciate their continued support as I do the support of all of my patrons. My Patreon does help me pay the bills, so I very much appreciate everyone there. If that's something you're interested in contributing to, there's a link to that down in the description below if you'd like to check that out. I also have a P.O. box. If there's anything you would like to send me, that's down there as well, as is a link to my Amazon wish list and a link to my Amazon UK wish list as well. Most importantly though, thank you for watching.